A single president can steal a lot of money, but an entire government of corrupt officials? They can take a country for everything it's worth. That's why to really make the most of your time in power and steal as much money as possible, you're gonna need help. That's why you gotta promote as many family members as possible into positions of power. You want to flood key government positions with your bloodline. This should be easy as long as you distract the people with something they love, like tax cuts, new developments, or fancy-sounding social programs. As long as the people are focused on all the quote-unquote good you're doing, they won't notice you quietly filling the government with your goons. And once you control the country's budget, every last cent of its money is yours for the taking. In the first 2 years of Gotabaya Rajapaksa's presidency, his brother Basil was appointed finance minister. His other brother Chamal was made a cabinet minister. And almost every other cousin, nephew, niece, aunt, and uncle was put in some position of power in the government. By the time Gotabaya ran out of relatives to employ, the Rajapaksa family controlled around 75% of the Sri Lankan government's budget. They created a monopoly, not a business monopoly, but a government monopoly. And thanks to their war hero status after the Civil War, everyone was happy that Sri Lanka was being ruled by pretty much one family. I mean, if the brothers were good enough to beat the Tamil Tigers, obviously having the whole family involved in politics would be great for the country and economy. Let's be honest, most third world countries don't exactly have billions of dollars lying around for you to steal. And unlike America, you can't just print more money because that would tank the value of your currency, which leaves you with a bit of a problem. How are you gonna get rich if there's no money to steal? That's where our guy Gotabaya comes in with the winning strategy again. You see, in 2020, he was faced with the same dilemma. The tax cuts he promised had cut the government's revenue by 25%. And then COVID came along and shut down the tourism industry, which was responsible for 12% of the country's GDP. Sri Lankans working abroad also stopped sending money back home. All of this meant that there really wasn't a lot of money lying around for his family to steal or misuse. But luckily, that's where the magic of debt comes in. See, it's super easy for third world nations to get money from banking institutions like the International Monetary Fund or IMF, the World Bank, or China. You simply go to them and say, "Our people are suffering, we don't have any food or infrastructure. You need to give us as much money as possible for developments and social programs." You say these projects are going to take your country to the next level, and you'll be able to pay them all back with interest, no problem. And then they'll write you a fat check.
Thank you.
Why? Because these people aren't giving you money out of the kindness of their hearts. They're giving you a loan that you have to pay back with interest, and when you can't repay them, they tighten the noose around you. Your country falls under their influence, their control, which is what happens to a lot of developing countries that take these loans. But you don't care if you leave your country shackled in debt, so you take as many loans as you can and put the money into your pocket. But the problem is, you can't be that brazen about it. You actually have to look like you tried to use the money for good, or else the masses will revolt. So here's what you gotta do. Once you get the loans, you use that money to pay for massive construction projects like buildings, hospitals, and airports. The key here is that the companies you pay to build these projects are owned by none other than your friends and family. Now you may be wondering, but I want money in my pocket, not just my friends and family. Calm down, calm down. You simply make a deal with them that you get control over your cut of these funds that get paid. It doesn't matter if the bank account is under their name and not yours. In fact, it should be under their name and not yours. All that matters is that you're able to spend the money as if it was your own. If that strategy draws a bit too much attention, you can easily make a deal with an outside business to do the work for you. But just arrange an under-the-table deal to make sure they secretly pay you a cut of the money you give them. That way, a chunk of every payment you or your family pays from the government's account for these developments makes its way back into your pocket. And since your family controls the country's entire budget, you never have to struggle to get approval for payments or projects because you're all equally corrupt and equally happy to bleed the country's coffers dry. The more debt you rack up, the more pointless buildings you construct, the more money you stand to make. And this is exactly what the Rajapaksa dynasty did in Sri Lanka. By 2019, foreign debt was around 42% of the country's GDP. That meant the Sri Lankan government would have to use almost half of all the money every person in Sri Lanka made in a year to pay back its debt. This debt was used to import food and medicine, and even though it seems like a lot, the country's debt was manageable. That was until Gotabaya Rajapaksa got involved. He racked up the country's debt as fast as possible from China or the IMF, while claiming it was for some big development or to help uplift the people, when in reality, he was using it to build vanity projects like airports and unused hospitals. All developments Sri Lanka didn't really need, but it made the government look good. And just 2 years later in 2021, Sri Lanka's foreign debt ballooned to 119% of its GDP. This dude borrowed $56 billion in 2 years. And you know what that means. A good chunk of that $56 billion went straight into their pockets. That meant even if the government took all the money the entire country made in a year, it still wouldn't be enough to pay off its debt. So now that you've extracted as much money as you can from your country, now all you have to do is find somewhere to hide all that cash so no one can ever trace it back to you. As you're bleeding your country dry, you want to make sure all that money flows to offshore accounts using all sorts of fake shell companies and bank accounts. That way, it will be nearly impossible to trace the money back to you, and you'll be able to enjoy your stolen millions in peace. The great thing is that there's an entire industry that specializes in helping people like you who value privacy set these things up. It's just a quick Google search away. But beware, sometimes there are leaks that happen where you will get exposed for doing stuff like this. Like what happened to the Rajapaksa family. They had been involved in Sri Lankan politics since the 1940s. But thanks to a decades-long civil war and the fact that the family ran the government for more than 10 years, there's no real record of any of their actual wealth. With family members in every powerful position, the Rajapaksas managed to remove all the checks and balances that would have kept track of how much they were really worth. And they did all of this. They set up the shell companies, they set up the offshore accounts. But then in 2021, the Pandora Papers dropped.
Pandora Papers, as they're being called.
So world leaders, powerful politicians, even drug dealers
were revealed in almost 12 million files.
It was a massive data leak exposing thousands of offshore accounts and their owners' details, which also included accounts held by the Rajapaksa family worth tens of millions of dollars. Just one of the family's lower-level government members was reportedly worth $160 million. And there's no way all of it came from their coconut and rice farming. No matter how good you are at hiding corruption, it's only a matter of time until one of your pesky, annoying subjects figures out something's not right. It doesn't matter how well you cover your tracks. Eventually, people are gonna notice billions of dollars evaporating into thin air. And that's when you gotta go on the defensive. While Sri Lanka's foreign currency was running out thanks to all the debt Gotabaya racked up and all the useless projects he started, the president did his best to pretend everything was perfectly fine. He got the Sinhalese Buddhist community to openly voice their support for him while blasting state-owned media channels with all the good work the government was doing.